Yo, management of human waste is too often taken for granted when dealing with the pollution factor of other people's waste. I previously wrote an article discussing the problem of people in India and Nepal being forced to service excrement and sewers without protective gear. Please see it, or I read it on video as well. Now, the earliest humans had no need for toilets, plumbing, or sewage systems since there were so few people, so going outside like animals had no significant environmental impact. But with any large population packed together, it becomes a big problem. In many regions, this problem has been dealt with so long ago that most people take for granted the convenience of modern plumbing and sophisticated sewage systems. So to engender thankfulness, consider that the earliest method of human waste management was the cesspool. This began as merely a giant pit which families would do their business into. The earliest ones often had a large board across the pit with a hole cut out of the board which people sat on. Some people fell into their cesspool due to a rotted board finally giving way and monstrously drowned in their own waste. Eventually, people learned and so had a makeshift toilet over it instead of just a board, or people used chamber pots indoors, which they later dumped into the cesspool. And barriers were put over or around cesspools for safety when walking through the yard. Yet people often threw the contents of chamber pots out of windows because either they did not want to bother going to their cesspool or lived among a conglomeration of people where most were unable to have their own private cesspool. Though outhouses today have a cesspool under their toilet, even fully secure cesspools or outhouses long ago did not have chemicals they could drop in to battle the contagion and smell like we have today. Since problems continued, societies were compelled to develop techniques of modern waste management. However, a John Crapper did not invent the toilet. Instead, devices evolved to arrive at the modern toilet. The first man known to have come up with a crude flush toilet was Sir John Harington in 1596. In 1775, English inventor Alexander Cumming was granted the first patent for a flush toilet since he invented the S-shaped pipe below the bowl that prevented sewer gas from entering the toilet. However, not until 1851 did home flush toilets become widespread, and that was generally for the wealthy. Public sewage systems were still a major problem. Brick sewers had been operating in London, England since the 1600s. However, they were connected to cesspits, which leaked methane and other gases, which often caught fire and exploded, sometimes killing people. Most sewers were in disrepair. Then in July and August of 1858, a major event occurred in London called the Great Stink. Hot weather exacerbated the smell of untreated human waste which floated in the nearby Thames River. This was so bad it stunk up the insides of homes. Contamination caused outbreaks of the disease chlorella, which many people died from. See Wikipedia's Great Stink article. Although there was no John Crapper, there was a Thomas Crapper. He was an English plumber who founded Thomas Crapper and Company in London. In 1880, Crapper improved upon the S-bend by introducing the U-bend trap, which could not jam. He also acquired 3 patents pertaining to bathrooms. It was not until the 1950s that almost everyone in the Western Hemisphere had a modern indoor flush toilet. But still, beware! Since even in our 20th and 21st centuries, numerous people died or got seriously injured after falling into cesspools. That's because many flush toilets are run into cesspools instead of septic tanks, and sometimes the ground gives way above the cesspool. Septic tanks are an improvement if you have them secured and not exposed. And some wastewater treatment plant workers were killed when someone opened the valve when they were working on the pipes. The water pressure washed the workers away. Yet people are instead overly concerned with flushing the toilet every time. Besides, always flushing the toilet increases the chances of the toilet breaking and overflowing. One time while trying to shut my water valve off, I cracked the water line. As I was on the top floor, the water proceeded to flood the entire apartment complex. And flushing the toilet every time gives you a bigger water bill. Letting urine sit is not a serious threat of contamination. In fact, people used to hang their clothes in the toilet shaft, as the ammonia from the urine would kill fleas. But I don't recommend it. I wouldn't do that. Instead, what you should be aware of is the dreaded toilet plume. A toilet plume is the dispersal of microscopic particles which results from flushing a toilet. See Wikipedia's toilet plume article. That's because the lever tends to catapult the bowl's contents upward. You might have observed water spouting upward after a forceful flush. So ironically, those who are overly prissy over flushing the toilet may actually be contaminating themselves more than those whom they criticize. To tackle the toilet plume problem, you should close the lid before you flush every time, or use a toilet with a handle on top that you pull straight up to flush, or both. Regardless, we should all be reminded that though everyone produces waste and garbage, not everyone is helpful to others. In fact, many people make the world a worse place. And since our planet suffers from overpopulation, let's focus on the quality of life instead of the quantity of human life. And everyone has produced something far more offensive than human waste. That is sin. So let's make it our priority to clean that up. Recommended reading: the New Testament's Christian Scriptures, King James Version.